Hello, everyone. I am Eleanor Paquibulan, your virtual English teacher for today. Our subject is Creative Writing, Quarter 1, Module 2, Elements, Techniques, and Literary Devices in Poetry. But the focus of our discussion are on the other creative forms and literary devices of poetry. Let us learn. At the end of the lesson, you will be able to identify other creative forms and literary devices of poetry and write a short poem applying the various literary devices, exploring innovation techniques. Before we proceed, let us try to answer Activity 1 to test how well do you know the topic. Please get your paper and pen. This serves as our pre-test. Are you ready? Activity 1. Arrange the scrambled letters to form words. I will give you 3 minutes to form the words. Time is up. Let's check your answer. Number 1. The word is sinking. Number 2, epitaph. Number 3, riddle. Number 4, acrostic. And number 5, clarify. Are these words familiar to you? Maybe yes, maybe no. These words have something to do with our lesson today, for they are the other creative forms of poetry. Let's discuss each of them accordingly. Let's begin with sinking. What is sinking? Sinking is a poem composed of 5 lines, in which each line has a certain number of words. How to write this form of poetry? Well, just simply follow the format. Line 1 is composed of one word, and this word should be noun, the subject of the poem. Line 2 is composed of 2 words, should be an adjective that describes the subject in line 1. Line 3 is made up of 3 words with ing action verbs, participles that relate to the subject in line 1. Line 4. It is made up of 4 words. It could be a phrase or a sentence that relates feelings about the subject in line 1. Line 5 is composed of 1 word, a synonym for the subject in line 1, or a word that sums it up. But take note, there is an alternative way in writing line 5 being used by older poets that is composed of 5 words. It could be a phrase or a sentence that further relates feelings about the subject in line 1. Here's an example of sinking. Snow is white, resembling very gold, pretty as a soft lace, making angels in the drifts. The second other creative form of poetry is epitaph. What is epitaph? An epitaph is a short written tribute in poetry or prose in memory of a deceased person. The more common definition of epitaph is that of the inscription on a tombstone. Example: Molly, though pleasant in her day, was suddenly seized and went away. How soon she is ripe how soon she's rotten, laid in her grave and soon forgotten. For Mary Fowler, 1972, Milford, C.T. Another examples of epitaph are shown in the slide. The third other creative form of poetry is riddle. What is riddle poetry? Riddle poetry mainly provides a description of its subject that is done in a poetic way. It leaves the readers to guess as they need to decipher the answer by analyzing the description carefully, or sensory details, since the subject to be identified is not named. Just like these two examples. Example number 1. The beginning of eternity, the end of time and space, the beginning of every end, and the end of every place. What do you think is the answer to this riddle? Yes, very good. It's letter E, because the beginning of eternity, the end of time and space, the beginning of every end, and the end of every place is letter E. Very good. Now, another riddle. What starts with NE and is one of 9 and ends with NE and is 8th in line? Do you know the answer? Yes, the answer is Neptune, for it starts with NE, ends in NE, and 8th among the 9 planets. Very good! The fourth other creative form of poetry is acrostic. What is acrostic poetry? Acrostic poetry is a creative composition in verse in which the initial letters of each line or phrase are taken to form a word. Examples: the words astride and joy. For the word astride, we have astonishingly sweet and tenaciously radiant, intelligent, dazzling, energetic kid. And for the word joy, we have joyful over the years. The fifth other creative form of poetry is cleryhue. What is cleryhue? Cleryhue is a comic verse consisting of 2 couplets and a specific rhyming scheme. AABB, invented by Edmund Cleryhue Bentley, 1875-1956, at the age of 16. For example, the poem entitled Mr. Shaw by Anonymous. Let me read the poem. Mr. Shaw, Anonymous. Our art teacher, Mr. Shaw, really knows how to draw, but his awful paintings have caused many faintings. Those are the 5 other creative forms of poetry. Again, they are cinquain, epitaph, riddle, acrostic, and cleryhue. Now, let us continue with the non-conventional forms of poetry. These are free verse, complete poetry, and performance poetry. What is free verse poetry? Free verse poetry is an open form of poetry. It does not use consistent meter patterns, rhyme, or any musical pattern, and it tends to follow the rhythm of natural speech. just like the example shown in the slides. Let me read it for you. The builder. A builder built a temple. He wrought it with grace and skill, pillars and groins and arches, all fashioned to work his will. Men said, as they saw its beauty, it shall never know decay. Great is thy skill, O builder, thy fame shall endure for age. A teacher built a temple with loving and infinite care, planning each arch with patience, laying each stone with prayer. None praised her unceasing effort. None knew of her wondrous plan, for the temple the teacher built was unseen by the eyes of men. Gone is the builder's temple, tumbled into the dust. Low lies each stately pillar, food for consuming rust. But the temple the teacher built will last while the ages roll, for that beautiful unseen temple was a child's immortal soul. Author unknown. With this example, we can say that the poem The Builder does not use consistent meter patterns, rhyme, or any musical pattern, and it tends to follow the rhythm of natural speech. Let us proceed to the second conventional form, the concrete poetry. What is concrete poetry? Concrete poetry is a form of poetry that deploys visual and typographical effects like the shape of a tree, letter, or symbols as they appear on the page as image. This form of poetry is also known as shaped verse, visual poetry, or pattern poetry. Example: Christmas time is near. Soon we'll wrap the house in lights and watch it sparkle in the light. Oh, how I love this time of year. I mailed my list to Santa. I just know he's going to grant me my one and only wish, a pup named Trevor who will stay with me forever. Then, we have the third conventional form, the performance poetry. What is it? Well, performance poetry is a postmodern art form, a hybrid genre that combines literary and dramatic elements. In this poetry, the poet utilizes the theatrical stage as if it were a printed page. Performance poetry, as a literary dramatic movement, is also known as spoken word and poetry slam. Example: the poem entitled Insomnia by Maro Peter Henry. Sa saliw ng awitan ng mga kuliglig at palaka, sumayaw ka palayo hanggang sa bigla ka na lamang nawala. Pinalaya ang mga luha upang sumisiksik sa mga unan, nananaginip na ang mundo, dilat mata akong naiiwan. Sa liwanag ng mga libo-libong alitap-tap dyan sa langit, nilasing mo ang iyong sarili sa hindi mabilang na mga bakit. Walang balak na sumilong sa malamig na yakap ng aking kumot. Walang balak na magpahele sa malamig na boses ng pagkalibot. Sa paghimbing ng mga alitap-tap sa kadiliman ng umaga, paus na ang mga kuliglig at kahit saan lumingon wala ka. Pinapaslang ng mga buntong hininga ang mga hikab na walang kalaban-laban. Hindi ako pinapatulog ng pagkagising mo sa katotohanan. Those are the three non-conventional forms of poetry: the free verse, the concrete poetry, and the performance poetry. Now, let's proceed to the literary devices in poetry. At its most basic, A poetic device is a deliberate use of words, phrases, sounds, and even shapes to convey meaning. That sounds so broad that it could basically encompass any form of written expression. But poetic devices are generally used to heighten the literal meaning of words by considering sound, form, and function. What are the literary devices in poetry? Yes, we have imagery and figurative language. What is imagery? Imagery is defined as a vivid and vibrant form of description that appeals to readers' senses and imagination. Despite the word's connotation, imagery is not focused solely on visual representations or mental images. It refers to the full spectrum of sensory experiences, including internal emotions and physical sensations. Imagery has three types. First, the visual imagery. Second, the auditory imagery. And the third is the olfactory imagery. Visual imagery. In this form of poetic imagery, the poet appeals to the reader's sense of sight by describing something the speaker or narrator of the poem sees. William Wordsworth's classic 1804 poem entitled "I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud" is a good example. I wandered lonely as a cloud that floats on high over valleys and hills, when all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils, beside the lake, beneath the trees, fluttering and dancing in the breeze. It is visual because, as you read the lines of the poem, you will be able to imagine the cloud that floats on valleys and hills. You can also imagine the crowd, the golden daffodils, the lake, and the trees as if you see them with your naked eye. Next is auditory imagery. When we say auditory imagery, it is a poetic imagery that appeals to the reader's sense of hearing or sound. It may include music and other pleasant sounds, harsh noises, or silence. In addition to describing a sound, the poet might also use a sound device like onomatopoeia, or words that imitate sounds. So, reading the poem aloud recreates the auditory experience. Example: Splinter by Carl Sandburg. The voice of the last cricket across the first frost is one kind of goodbye. It is so thin, a splinter of singing. What makes it an example of auditory imagery? Yes, it is seen in the first line, voice of the last cricket, and the last line, splinter of singing. The last type of imagery is olfactory imagery. In this type, the poet appeals to the reader's sense of smell by describing something the speaker of the poem inhales. It may include pleasant fragrances or off-putting odors. Example: Rain in Summer by H.W. Longfellow. They silently inhale the clover's scented air and the vapors that arise from the well-watered and smoking soil. There are hints here: the words inhale, scented gale, and smoking soil. Now, could you tell me the three types of imagery? Yes, very good. They are visual imagery, auditory imagery, and olfactory imagery. Finally, we come up with the last literary device, the figurative language. Figurative language or languages are words and expressions used in poems and texts to convey various meanings and interpretations from the literal meaning. Figurative devices play a major role in writing poems, sonnets, or ballads. They are the best tool for a writer to appeal to the senses of the reader. These devices give the reader detailed, vivid, and expressive insights. It also gives dimension to poetry and allows the writer to say things with additional flair and color. The most common techniques of figurative languages you can find in poetry are simile, metaphor, symbolism, alliteration, and hyperbole. What is simile? Simile is used as a literary device to assert similarity with the help of like or as that establish equivalency. Example: A Red, Red Rose by Robert Burns. Oh, my love's like a red, red rose that's newly sprung into. Oh, my love's like the melody that's sweetly played into. So fair art thou, my bonny lass, so deep in love am I, and I will love thee still, my dear, till the seas run dry. As you can see, the writer of the poem asserts similarity between love and red rose, as stated in the first line, and love and melody in the third line, with the use of the word like. Then we have metaphor. What is metaphor? Yes, it is a figure of speech that makes a comparison between two unlike things. As a literary device, metaphor creates implicit comparisons without the use of like or as. Metaphor is a means of asserting that two things are identical in comparison rather than just similar. Example: Fire and Ice by Robert Frost. Some say the world will end in fire, some say in ice. From what I've tasted of desire, I hold with those who favor fire. But if it had to perish twice, I think I know enough of hate to say that for destruction, ice is also great and would suffice. What is being compared in this poem? Yes, the end of the world is being compared to the elemental force of fire with the emotion of desire, and ice with hate. Now we have symbolism. What is it all about? Symbolism is defined as the use of symbols to signify ideas and qualities by giving them symbolic meanings that are different from their literal sense. Symbolism gives freedom to writers to add double levels of meanings to his work, a literal one that is self-evident, and the symbolic one in which meaning is far more profound than the literal. Example: all the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts. Excerpt from As You Like It by William Shakespeare. Now, we have alliteration. What is alliteration? Alliteration is derived from Latin's latera. It means letters of the alphabet. It is a stylistic device in which a number of words having the same first consonant sound occur close together in a series. It creates a musical effect in the text that enhances the pleasure of reading a literary piece. It makes reading and recitation of the poems attractive and appealing, thus making them easier to learn by heart. Example: had we bought world enough and time, this coyness, lady, were no crime. We would sit down and think which way to walk and pass our long lost day. An excerpt from To His Coy Mistress by Andrew Marber. What same first consonant sounds are being repeated in the excerpt? Yes, the k and l sounds are repeatedly heard. Next we have hyperbole. What is hyperbole? Hyperbole is derived from the Greek word meaning overcasting. It is a figure of speech that involves an exaggeration of ideas for the sake of emphasis. By using hyperbole, a writer or a poet makes common human feelings remarkable and intense to such an extent that they do not remain ordinary. Example: I love you, dear, I love you, till China and Africa meet, and the river jumps over the mountain, and the salmon sing in the street. I love you till the ocean is folded and hung up to dry, and the 7 stars go squawking like geese about the sky. An excerpt from As I Walked One Evening by W.H. Auden. It is an example of hyperbole because of the lines of the poem that make the persona's love not ordinary. Again, what are the most common figurative languages you can find in poetry? Yes, excellent! We have simile, metaphor, symbolism, alliteration, and hyperbole. Let us practice. Let's answer activity 2. You complete me. In here, you need to refer to your module for the copy of the poem and the table. Do you have them now? Instruction: analyze and read the poem. After analyzing, fill in the correct information asked in the given table that follows. You are given 5 minutes to do the said activity. Your time starts now. Time is up. Your output for this activity will be submitted to your creative writing teacher. Let us practice more. Let's answer activity 3. Say my name. Instruction: create an acrostic poetry using your own name. Use imagery and figurative language to vividly describe your poem. Let us remember. Let's do activity 4. You got it right. Instruction: match the sample poem in column A to its creative form in column B. Write the letter only on your paper. Are you done? Very good. Since you're finished, I want you to read the poem entitled Trees by Langston Hogg. Then, after reading it, please answer the questions that follow. Finished? Okay, do not forget to submit your answer to your creative writing teacher. Now, let's assess. Let us do Activity 5. Paint a picture. Read and understand the imagery used in the given poems. Select one of the two and illustrate it with a drawing or a painting in a long bond paper. The rubric is shown in the slide and in your module as your guide in doing this activity. For your assignment, do the Let Us Enhance the Speak and Write activity in your module. Directions. Go to your favorite place. Think of one thing you are most passionate about. It can be about love, life, or anything under the sun. Creatively write a 3-stanza poem or more using 3 words. Use the elements of poetry that we have learned from this lesson. Write your own poem on a long bond paper. Be guided by the rubric below. Next, let us reflect. You did a great job in completing our module. Kudos to your hard work. Let us look back from where we have started and complete the chart below. Let us reflect towards your journey in learning the poetry. I thought, please complete it. Next, what were your misconceptions about the topic prior to taking the lesson? I thought that, please complete it. Next, what additional learning have you had after taking up this lesson in terms of skills and attitude? Please answer it religiously. Next, the references used in today's lesson. Good job, students! See you again in our next virtual class. Once again, I am teacher Eleanor Paquibulan, your virtual English teacher today. Goodbye and God bless everyone.